In the heart of a mysterious land, there's a legendary place steeped in prophecy, known to those who believe in the supernatural. This ancient site, with its old walls and secret chambers, is said to stay closed and untouched until a specific moment, the second coming of Jesus. Many have tried to unveil its mysteries, but none have succeeded, for its true purpose is meant to be revealed only at the right time. What secrets does it hold, and what could it mean for the future? Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the thumbs up button, and ring the bell to explore the history, prophecies, and chilling reality of this monumental event in Jerusalem. We'll discuss the Temple Mount, a sacred site in Judaism, believed to be the location of the first and second temples. For Muslims, it's the third holiest site, known as Haram al-Sharif. Christians also hold the Temple Mount in high regard due to its biblical significance. The Golden Gate, or the Gate of Mercy in Hebrew, is one of the gates of the Old City of Jerusalem, situated on the western side of the walls. It was the main gate connecting the Temple Mount to the outside. According to Jewish tradition, the Messiah will enter through this gate to reach the temple. In the 16th century, the Ottoman Sultan blocked the gate and established a Muslim cemetery to prevent the Messiah's passage. According to Christian tradition, Jesus entered Jerusalem through this gate. Recently, the Golden Gate has become a focal point of conflict. It was closed in 2003 by an Israeli court to protect it from illegal excavations and used by Hamas-affiliated groups. However, on February 14, 2019, the Jordanian Muslim Waqf, which gained administrative control of the Temple Mount after the Six-Day War in 1967, reopened the area for Muslim prayer. Israel has attempted to close the structure again, but Palestinians continue to enter. Although Israel opposes any proposal from the Waqf to convert the gate into another mosque on the mount, the Muslim community aims to turn it into a prayer hall or an Islamic institute of learning. Here's the current situation and background of the battle for the Golden Gate. This struggle didn't start with the formation of Israel. It goes back centuries. Many believe this is not just a physical battle but a spiritual one too. So why is this gate so significant? Why has it been sealed twice? Why is there a cemetery in front of it? In this episode, we'll explore these questions and provide a thorough theological, historical, and archaeological background to the Golden Gate. Let's get started. The Old City of Jerusalem is surrounded by a large wall with 8 major gates. The Eastern Gate, also known as the Golden or Mercy Gate, faces the Mount of Olives and is unique because it's sealed shut. It's believed to be the oldest gate in the Old City. When it was built, this gate provided the most direct access to the area of the Jewish temple, as it's the closest point to where the temple once stood. Jews would pray near this gate to be as close as possible to their holiest site. The Eastern Gate was sealed in 1541 by the Ottoman Sultan Suleiman. However, it had been closed before, in 810 by Muslims, then reopened in 1102 by the Crusaders, and walled up again by Saladin, the first Sultan of Egypt and Syria, and the founder of the Ayyubid dynasty. The gate's exterior, from the 16th century, is a sealed double entrance leading into 2 vaulted halls. Though the facade dates to the 16th century, evidence suggests the gate stands on the remains of an ancient gate built by Jews leading to the First Temple, constructed by Solomon himself. During the Second Temple period, the Eastern Gate was called the Shushan Gate. Jewish tradition says that Jews returning from exile in the Babylonian and Persian empires carved an image of the Persian capital's palace on the Shushan Gate to honor the Persian kings who helped them rebuild the temple and Jerusalem. But why are we talking about this gate? What makes it so important? Standing next to this impressive structure can send shivers down your spine as you imagine the future event many believe could take place here. Today, opposite the Golden Gate on the Mount of Olives, there's a huge Jewish cemetery. Many religious Jews wish to be buried here because, according to the Bible, this is where the Jewish Messiah will come to establish his everlasting kingdom. The Mount of Olives is significant not only to religious Jews, but also to Christians and Muslims. Located to the east of the Old City of Jerusalem, this iconic mountain has been a site of religious and historical importance for centuries. Its majestic views overlooking the city and the Kidron Valley make it a place of contemplation and spirituality. According to Jewish tradition, The Mount of Olives is the holiest cemetery in Judaism. It's believed that the resurrection of the dead will begin here when the Messiah arrives. Consequently, many religious Jews choose to be buried here, hoping to be among the first to be resurrected. The burial tradition on the Mount of Olives dates back thousands of years, with numerous ancient tombs and grave sites scattered across the landscape. For Christians, the Mount of Olives is profoundly significant as the place where Jesus is said to have ascended to heaven. The Chapel of the Ascension, located at the summit, commemorates this event and attracts thousands of pilgrims each year. Walking in the footsteps of Jesus along the Palm Sunday route, which descends from the Mount of Olives to the Old City, is a powerful spiritual experience for many Christians. In Islam, the Mount of Olives is revered as the place where the Prophet Muhammad is said to have seen a vision of heaven and hell during his night journey. The Dome of the Ascension, located on the mountaintop, marks the spot where the Prophet prayed before ascending to the heavens. The presence of sacred sites from all three major monotheistic religions on the Mount of Olives symbolizes the interconnectedness of faith and history in Jerusalem. Visitors to the Mount of Olives can see the ancient olive trees that give the mountain its name, some of which are believed to be over 1,000 years old. The peaceful atmosphere and panoramic views make it a popular destination for tourists and pilgrims seeking spiritual connection and reflection. As the sun sets over Jerusalem, casting a golden light on the city below, the timeless beauty and sacredness of the Mount of Olives continue to inspire awe and reverence in all who visit. The need to be buried on the Mount of Olives is linked to an ancient prophecy by the Jewish prophet Zechariah, who foretold that the Messiah would arrive and stand on the Mount of Olives. In Zechariah 14:4 we read, "And his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst thereof toward the east and toward the west, and there shall be a very great valley, and half of the mountain shall remove toward the north, and half of it toward the south." When the Messiah comes, there will be a massive resurrection of the righteous dead, and those buried on the Mount of Olives will see the Messiah first. This is why burial plots here can cost millions of dollars. Additionally, according to the prophet Ezekiel, after the Messiah arrives on the Mount of Olives, he will enter the temple through the eastern gate. In Ezekiel 44 it is written, "Then said the Lord unto me, This gate shall be shut, it shall not be opened, and no man shall enter in by it. Because the Lord, the God of Israel, hath entered in by it, therefore it shall be shut. It is for the prince, he shall sit in it to eat bread before the Lord. He shall enter by the way of the porch of that gate, and shall go out by the way of the same." Ezekiel also writes that the glory of God will re-enter the temple through the eastern gate in the final days. In Ezekiel 43:4 we read, "And the glory of the Lord came into the house by the way of the gate whose prospect is toward the east." This gate is significant not only for its future prophetic events, but also for its historical importance. God has used the Eastern Gate in his plan of atonement and redemption since biblical times. For instance, during the Yom Kippur ritual, the high priest performed purification rituals on the Mount of Olives. From there, he could see over the Shushan Gate into the temple sanctuary. The Shushan Gate was used on the holiest day of the Jewish year, Yom Kippur, as part of God's atonement process for Israel. According to ancient Jewish writings in the Mishnah, 2 goats were purchased at the East Gate on Yom Kippur. One goat was sacrificed in the temple courtyard to atone for the most holy place, the tent of meeting, and the altar. The high priest confessed all the sins of Israel by laying his hands on the head of the second goat, which was then taken to the Mount of Olives. This scapegoat symbolically carried away all the iniquities and sins of the nation, removing them to a solitary place, never to return. The most significant event in human history also took place in this area 2,000 years ago. Jesus Christ, the sinless Son of God, was condemned to die and take upon himself all the sins of the world. He was beaten, whipped, and mocked in the Kidron Valley, then nailed to a cross outside the eastern gate of Jerusalem on the slopes of the Mount of Olives. The prophet Zechariah also foretold that Jesus Christ will return and set foot on the Mount of Olives. While the first time Jesus entered Jerusalem riding a donkey, the second time he will come in all his glory to establish his millennial kingdom, as the Bible says. In Matthew 21:6-7 it says, "The disciples went and did as Jesus had instructed them. They brought the donkey and the colt and placed their cloaks on them for Jesus to sit on, This verse highlights the significance of the Eastern Gate for Christians, as it is believed to be the exact gate through which Jesus entered Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. The Eastern Gate has been used by God repeatedly to accomplish His plans, leading many scholars to believe it holds significant prophetic importance. It's through this gate that the Lord Himself is expected to enter to rule the world. Interestingly, it appears that the enemies of God are aware of this prophecy and have taken measures to block Jesus' return. The name Golden Gate was given by Christians who believed Jesus passed through it on Palm Sunday. In the 1500s, Turkish Ottoman ruler Suleiman the Magnificent heard the prophecies that said the Jewish Messiah would enter through the Golden Gate. To prevent this, he sealed it shut and placed a Muslim cemetery in front of it. Suleiman thought that blocking the entrance and adding the cemetery would stop the Jewish Messiah from coming. According to Jewish tradition, a Jewish priest cannot walk into a cemetery without becoming unclean, based on the Old Testament law in Numbers 19:11, which states that anyone who touches a dead person will be unclean for 7 days. Today, if you visit the Eastern Gate, you'll see that there is no easy way to walk into the Temple Mount area without crossing the Muslim cemetery. To sum up, both the Bible and the Quran state that Jesus will return from the Mount of Olives, descend through the Kidron Valley, and enter the Temple Mount. When Jews saw that the Eastern Gate was blocked by their enemies, they began to hope and believe in the coming of the Messiah. They believe the cemetery is merely a physical obstacle and that the Messiah will come and enter the Temple Mount regardless. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel and give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to share it with others and comment below to let me know your thoughts on the battle for the Golden Gate.